we are continuing our conversation with youth leaders, and we are very happy to have with us in studio here Raejan Montoute. Raejan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I was about to say Raejan from the north, but I know Raejan represents almost every cardinal point in St. Lucia. But you basically are based in the north.
Yes, in Grizzly, in the heart of Grizzly.
And currently you're the president of the Grizzly Youth and Sports Council.
Yes, I am. Grizzly North Youth and Sports Council.
Grizzly North. And that brings us to other cardinal points. You mentioned Grizzly North, so is there a Grizzly South?
Yes, there is also a Grizzly South Youth and Sports Council, and hopefully in the coming years, we plan to establish a Grizzly Central Youth and Sports Council representing the Moshi, Lafayette, Riviera area.
Okay, so giving youth in the different communities a voice and a say.
Yes.
What's happening. So, Raejan, let's talk about you first of all. I know I've known you to be so involved, committed to youth work, community work. What inspired your interest in youth work in community development?
To be honest, it all started one day when my sister was part of a group called the Grizzly Community Action Group. And then she told me, you know, I think you should join this group. You would like it. Mm-hmm. That was the conversation. You would like it.
She didn't tell you about the work?
No, she didn't tell me anything about the group. She just told me there is a meeting up the road. Go, you will like it. And that was the conversation. And then I went. And then from that group, it just all went down in a waterfall, falling into communication with the youth and sports officers, and then going on to the Grizzly Youth Council back in 2014, and then having to go through the NYC debates, and then on from there, just going through different groups, different youth initiatives, and just really just falling in love with the process of giving back to community and helping young people like myself.
So did you like it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you're still involved.
Yes, I am.
So that's good. So give us an idea of some of your interests. I know you do community development and so on, but tell us a little bit about Raejan. We're interested in knowing who Raejan is.
Okay, okay, no problem. Well, professionally, I work at the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. I do web content development, social media, a bit of graphics, a bit of web development work here and there. I sell natural hair products as well.
Oh, cool.
And I have a page on Instagram at Raejan where I just talk about adulting and personal finance. I find that is a topic that's kind of a bit of taboo, talking about salaries and all these kinds of things in St. Lucia, and that a lot of us young people don't know the basics of budgeting. So what I tend to focus on there. In addition to that, and my youth development work, I like talking.
Okay,
I like talking,
so
I like food.
So you're an entrepreneur as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
With the natural hair products, I also have a small business where I write resumes, CVs, and business profiles for small businesses and individuals. And I also engage in a bit of photography and video ads, small video ads. But basically, in a nutshell, that is the business.
So I guess something like the youth economy would have been welcome news for you when you heard the announcement that there's a focus on that.
Well, yes, and I'm still waiting to hear the real details behind it. You know, yes, we hear the youth economy, but I'm ready to hear, okay, what's the plan? Is it grants for small businesses who young people are managing? Is it opportunities? I'm waiting to hear, you know, what exactly is the initiative behind the youth economy.
And are your members, the young persons you interact with in Grizzly, how much interest are they showing? How much excitement are they showing about the youth economy?
I think everybody is similar to what I have. Just wondering, what is it? Okay, yes, we hear it. Yes, it sounds interesting, but what exactly is it, and what's behind it, and how can I get about doing it? You know, there are still many questions about it. From young people I've interacted with, young entrepreneurs, and myself, I'm just curious as to knowing, okay, where does this go after the term youth economy?
But what would you like as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's personally involved, what would you like to see the youth economy definitely address that has not been addressed in terms of youth and youth in business? For sure, funding and grant funding. For micro and small businesses that young people manage or that young people are the owners of. I think that is a space that is lacking, because you would have young persons who have very brilliant ideas for as an entrepreneur, but the funding, you know, it's not like I own a piece of land or I own something that I could approach the bank with for them to give me a loan. So where do I start?
And even on a small level, like for example, if a young person has a business selling donuts and they want to upgrade their cake mixer, they might not have an opportunity to go to the bank for a loan of $1,000, but have a space where they can go to get that loan so that they could buy a cake mixer. These small initiative, but for sure funding. The next thing would be training, having opportunities for small business management training, training in marketing, business writing. That would be another aspect of something that I would expect coming out of the youth economy for sure, would be opportunities for funding and training of young entrepreneurs.
Has there been some kind of an outreach? Because from what you're saying, you're waiting for information. I suppose we'll get some information when the budget is presented, I think in April or March. Are you sensing, are you aware of outreach to organizations like yours, Strategy Island, to say, okay, we're doing this, or are they saying that you have to wait till the formal announcement is made?
There was one instance where I heard of a young entrepreneur symposium. I think that was hosted by either SADO or the Ministry of Commerce.
Ministry of Commerce in Taiwan, yes.
Right? There was that initiative, so I think that was a start in that direction. But other than that, I have not heard anything else.
Okay. Yeah, we all are waiting with bated breath for the announcements and the formal launch of it, because we know there was a launch of that program that Sir Arthur Lewis Community College was also involved with as well. So, Raejan, so you decided to be part of the Gros North Youth and Sports Council. I know your plate was already full, but you took this on. So what exactly is it that you wanted to achieve by running and becoming president of the Gros North Youth and Sports Council?
Okay. Well, my tenure in the Gros North Youth and Sports Council, one thing that I wanted to do, and to some extent I would give myself a small clap for accomplishing, I wanted to show young people that it's not just, opportunities don't just exist in sports, but there are youth development opportunities, and also model what I think a Youth and Sports Council should be for the rest of my fellows across the district branches. So my three focuses for my past, because this is my second tenure as president, so my past tenure focused mainly on educational opportunities in the forms of scholarships, not just for students, but also for people who are not in education or training. So we have a NIT Youth Scholarship that we just launched the second cohort, well, second round of scholars. We opened applications for that, and it's just a scholarship for young people between 15 to 29 who are not in any form of education, employment, or training, who just want an opportunity to go to study a course, and we're working with NELU, the National Learning Enrichment Unit, to facilitate that. And like I said, with the student scholarships, we also give primary schoolers who are transitioning to secondary school aid in that regard. Another thing that my Youth and Sports Council took on was during the COVID season, knowing that so many businesses closed down and so many young people who were just getting involved in business or just started their business closed down, we offered some grant assistance as well as entrepreneurship training for them. And also we facilitated hamper and food basket donations to underprivileged people within our community. And we organized, the best way I could describe it is like a free flea market. So there would be clothes, shoes, books, children's toys, that it was just open to the community. So anybody who wanted or who felt that they needed some new clothes for the Christmas season, or their child needed something, that they could have come and just picked up whatever they want and, said thank you and left. So that was basically my focus for my Youth and Sports Council, was educational opportunities, assistance to entrepreneurs, and outreach. And this time around, I want to now focus a little bit on sports, because I realize it's something that is still needed. But I wanted to, for sure, strike the balance between youth development and sports.
Excellent. And good luck with that, because we need to focus quite a lot on the area of sports. I know we do have some persons out there who are blazing the trail, and most of them are women, blazing the trail in sports. But we certainly need to get, even that area, as we mentioned, because I know from Laverne Spencer to Julian Alfred and all the other women who are out there doing in netball, doing exceptionally well for St. Lucia. Are you getting the sense that there is deliberate and enough attention being placed to developing women in sports?
I think that as of recent, some initiatives have started with regards to female development in sports, but I think that I'm not too sure what exactly the barriers are for our sporting associations to develop women in sports, but initiatives have been coming on stream. I know the SLFA tried at one instance to have a female coordinator symposium to try to train women managers and train female coaches in the area of women's football development. As well as I feel the Athletics Association did something similar. So I think there are some heavy barriers for them, but to say they haven't been trying or attempting or doing work would be wrong. So I think that they just need some support, some more support in that regard. But it is happening. It is happening, but just slow. It's a bit slow to uncracking the formula to how we can make this work for females and females in St. Lucia in particular.
Regarding the Football Association, as you mentioned, and also Cricket Association, they have very aggressive, well, on paper, they have programs trying to get more girls into sports and so on. I know football has a campaign, cricket has a youth competition. It's not national. There's some communities that still don't have a female, but that's the objective to get it. So we're moving in that general direction. And as you can see, we have, even from the own Gros area, who've represented, women who've represented the West Indies on cricket. And also we have a lot of young girls showing interest in football and getting scholarships. So that's an opportunity for advancement as well in that area. And I suppose with your focus on youth, we will see some more attention on that as well.
Hopefully so in the coming years.
Yeah, so the other thing we wanted to talk about, because it's current, the National Youth Council, you're also involved with the National Youth Council, and you are the chairperson of the Electoral Committee.
Yes.
Can you give us an update as to, we know we were supposed to have elections last year, COVID has put off a lot of things, plus there were other issues, but where are we at now, and what's the latest with the elections?
Okay, so right now the nomination period is opened, and it will close on the 17th of March of this year. What has happened prior was that we opened nomination period, the nomination period, but we received no nominations. So that formed a big hindrance in terms of course, executing the General Assembly. However, as of recent, we have been receiving a few nominations, so that is that's good news for us, and we're hoping that we could have a full quadrant of young people who are ready to vie for the position come the end of the nomination period, so that we could have the general elections. Hopefully, we've set it for the 16th of April.
So the closing date for nominations is?
Thursday the 17th of March.
So now it must be concerning, and we want to make an appeal to young persons. This is your opportunity. You still have up until the 17th of March to send in your nominations. It must be concerning to you and to other youth leaders that you said there was a period where there was no nominations?
Yes, it was very alarming, but for some of us, we were not too surprised by it, because of course we're still dealing with the how should I say, the leftover issues, especially with regards to what happened last year, June, with the National Youth Council. So we're still feeling the repercussions of that action. However, we still have hope. We still have hope that, and I mean, this is a opportunity for us to really do some introspection as an organization, see not just what happened, but see also the other kinks and things that are not tight bolts that we need to fix in order to make the environment more welcoming for young people's development, young people's growth, and also for us as youth leaders, for us to see the organization for what it really is, which is a very powerful youth organization in country, and a model to many other youth councils across the region. So this is a period for us to really rebuild what we know as the National Youth Council.
And we certainly need a NYC 2.0, because now with things like youth economy happening, we need to get the NYC needs to have a voice in there, and it needs to be a solid organization. So I suppose this is a critical turning point, as you mentioned, a reflection, a revisioning, a repositioning of the NYC.
Yes, most definitely.
And certainly a rebranding of it as well.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
So you have your plate full. I know you're organizing the elections and the General Assembly, but I'm sure you're still very involved.
Yes. Well, it cannot be left just to the incoming executives to do all the work. Each of us who are stakeholders within the NYC, whether past or present, or you are simply a member of a district council, you have a stake in the whole rebranding, rebuilding of the NYC. So the executive must, of course, we must have a new executive to chart the way forward, but the support system needs to be there for them. They need to feel encouraged, they need to feel empowered, and they need to, of course, rely on some of the resources that the branches and ex-members do have to be able to really and truly rebuild and rebrand.
It's not a case where we don't have talented and qualified young persons to run for office. It's just that you're saying that the willingness and probably the lack of interest, what exactly is preventing the bright young people we have from getting involved?
Yes, for sure. We do have a lot of bright young minds who can and who in my own personal perception would be great assets to the NYC. I think one, we're dealing with the long-standing lack of interest in the youth movement. I think NYC has slipped in the last couple of years with regards to getting youth interest, being on the ground with young people, showing your presence in the media. That's one instance where the interest has dwindled. And also you could see it reflected in our clubs and membership as well, because we have, whereas we started back, let's say about 8 years ago with 150, almost 200 clubs, if we have to do an inventory now of our membership, if we have over 100 clubs, I think that would be remarkable. So dealing with interest level is one thing. The second thing would be, of course, the situation which happened. We're still facing repercussions of that. And I feel that young people also putting themselves up for public office is something, because you face the scrutiny that comes with you just being in any public position. So that as well could be a bit of a barrier or hindrance to young people coming forward to carrying that mantle.
We saw what happened the last time you had General Assembly. It almost mimicked what happens nationally in terms of our politics. Is that being addressed because I suppose that might be one of the issues that's preventing young persons from getting involved, because it's too much like what they see in Parliament.
For sure. And one of the things we as an electoral committee, we took it on ourselves to do was to also have the sit-down conversations with the candidates to be. So our last sit-down conversation was, I think it happened sometime 2 weeks back, where the interested young people, we had a virtual session. It was attended by about 12 young people. I was the one facilitating it, so I went through the roles of the executive of the NYC. What could you expect? Who are the branches? Who are the people or the organizations and institutions that work with you as partners and you could rely on? And outside of the formal training per se, I did a session with them on a one-on-one, being an ex-NYC member. What are the expectations? What are your pros, your cons, and what are some of the things that you will face regardless of whether COVID was there or not, whether the situation happened or not, just the reality of being an NYC member. And I think it was well received by the young people who were present at the information session.
Okay, so just a reminder, the closing date for nominations is the 17th of March, and the General Assembly and the elections will happen on the 16th of April.
Yes, hopefully.
Smack in the middle of Youth Month.
Yes.
Okay, so that's to be something to celebrate as well.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so Raejan, as we speak, there's a discussion in St. Lucia, and I'm sure you followed the debate in Parliament about domestic violence bill. How are the youth involved, and are the youth actually discussing it? Because it certainly is impacting them. Youth are being affected by domestic violence and so on. How much interest are youth showing in something like a domestic violence bill, for example?
I think taking it in a formal, probably in a formal setting, formal seating, you will not have young people being actively involved. However, but the discussion is happening in the small circuits, in the small clubs and small groups, people having their one-on-one conversations with regards to it. Maybe they're not addressing the bill per se, but the whole topic of domestic violence and abuse at home is something that is a conversation. And even it has been highlighted at a few meetings I've gone to, just us young people speaking about the fact that domestic violence and abuse of children has gone up due to COVID and they not being at school. So that is a discussion that's happening, maybe just not in a formal setting. In terms of engagement with regards to young people and the actual bill that has been passed, I don't think that it has been that I don't think it's there. I don't think it has happened, but the conversation is happening, just not in the formal way that we would want to see. And again, all this is reasons why it's important for the National Youth Council to have a stake in these public matters so that you could bring the concerns of the young people out there and then reference things like the domestic violence bill and any other piece of legislation that affects young people.
I was thinking that when the government was being formed and senators were being appointed, that somebody representing the youth council or youth would become a senator, at least to get into the system to see how things are working, to have a voice and so on. But there was no one specifically representing youth. Is that something that you would give consideration, not you as a person in terms of, but youth would give consideration to having representation in the Senate? I
most definitely think so. At that level, there should be some form of youth representation, maybe coming out from the youth council or elsewhere. But for sure, young people need to be represented at all sectors and spheres of society. So our voice, and it's not just for us to be there for being their sake, but you must have a young person with a vested interest of being there and a vested interest in representing young people. So for sure, that is something that young people are considering, would like to see, and it should surely happen.
Because we have had youth parliament, and we've seen quite a lot of talent at the youth parliament, and I'm sure those persons, I don't think those persons can get involved in the debate at the Senate level and have a meaningful contribution to a national issue.
Yes.
Such as the domestic violence bill, which is being discussed in the Senate. I think it was yesterday. So certainly, definitely that, and also, well, crime is always a fact of life now. How much conversation is there among youth about how it's impacting them, and what are their thoughts on how you can deal with the crime situation?
I know at the community level, quite a few youth and sports councils have been engaged in discussions with Ministry of Equity and a few other departments with regards to how can we look at our community and try to curb the crime situation, as well as I remember the police were doing an initiative, community policing, and youth representation was there. The youth and sports councils were invited, and some of them were even part of the planning, which is good. And I think more initiatives like that could really bring us together as a community and deal with the issue, or at least get an idea of how we could prevent certain situations from happening, whether it may be identifying different black spots in the community where there's no lighting, no police patrol happening there. So, but however, on the national level, I have not seen it happening on the national level per se, but more on a community level is where I've witnessed the conversation about crime happening.
So on NYC 2.1, whoever the new president is in the executive will certainly need to take a deeper interest in those social issues as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
All right. So I wanted to bring something I saw on your Facebook page. I hope you didn't mind me going there. An interesting little conversation that you posted about a 5-year-old. And I'm going to read it if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
So the 5-year-old asked you or asked somebody, we have many young people in Gros, and that's across St. Lucia as well, who are not working and who don't attend school and who are just sitting around idle. What do you think we should do to help them? What was your response? And when you saw that, what exactly went through your mind?
Okay, so it was a little boy I was giving a ride to school. And I always like to engage with people on all different levels because you really just never know what your answer may be like. So I just decided, let me engage him in discussion. And you never know, the children sometimes have the answers for everything. It very rarely I ask the child a question and they say they don't know. So I was just intrigued as to what his answer would be. And then, so that's I posed the question to him. And then he told me that, well, he believes if I put a bucket on their head and I put them in my trunk and I drive them to school and then move the bucket and put them in the school, that would solve the issue. And I was so stunned. And I told him, well, maybe we need another idea outside of kidnapping people. But It's interesting that the school child believe that, you know, if we just force them to go into school, that they should go. Maybe he feels forced to go to school. Who knows? But it was interesting to hear that coming out from a 5-year-old. But at least what it brought to me was that they see the need that these people should be in school. Maybe not to the extreme point where we kidnap people, but at least for me, it shows me that even at that stage, that young people, children in our community see these things happening. They see that, okay, this person is not working, this person is not at school, but they should be. So, you know, that for me was one of the positives coming out of that conversation, where even our most fragile minds in our community still see the need that something must be done to help and to aid the idleness that could lead to crime, that could lead to drug abuse and all these other social ills that we're dealing with as a community. So for me, that was the positive coming out of that conversation.
Yeah, it was a good it's a good conversation, icebreaker and so on. And it got my attention immediately, and I said I must raise this to see what happened eventually. But it is certainly a conversation we need to have with the youth who appear to be idle. Some of them are idle for a particular reason, and some just can't help the situation and so on.
Yes.
And that's where probably the youth and sports councils and so on
would come into play.
Would come in. So do they have that specific role as a youth and sports council in terms of engaging those unattached youth? Because you normally deal with your members, but those youth who are not part of any organization, who are idle, just on the block, waiting for something to happen?
Well, my Youth and Sports Council, the program I spoke about earlier with regards to the NIT Youth Scholarship is exactly targeting these young people. So the aim is for that program is young people who are unemployed and who are not in school, to give them that learning opportunity. What we also do as a Youth and Sports Council is try our best to not close off our programming too much to the extent where a young person who's not in a club will feel ostracized because, you know, I'm not in a club, so I cannot participate. So, for example, we had a series of independence workshops that we did during the week of independence in project management, basic accounting, customer service, and brand management. And we opened it up to anybody. We had youth from as far as Viewfort participating in the Gros North series of workshops. So we try our best to not and as a matter of fact, the only really activity that we have where we close it off to members would be like our general club meetings or our general elections per se. But any other activity that we have as a Youth and Sports Council, we try to remain as open as possible. Trying our best, of course, to target young people. However, if a 32-year-old still wants to be part of our workshop, we will not stop them. You know, once it doesn't prevent a younger person from taking advantage of the issue, we still open it to persons older, persons outside of our community, and even persons outside of our country.
Are all youth and sports councils connected? Do they have probably an annual meeting of all the presidents?
Yes. What happens at the NYC level, we have what is called a general council. So general council means representatives from each youth and sports council from around the island would come together into one meeting, one forum, and have general discussions, get to find out what your council is doing and how our councils can partner, share ideas, share opportunities, what's going on, even grant funding. If you have a fund and you believe that somebody else could benefit from it, share that in that forum. But that happens on the NYC level general council meeting. And we stay in touch. Some of us have very close relationships, just on a one-on-one. Whenever you visit in a community, you give a shout to the Youth and Sports Council president, and, you know, they show you around, that kind of thing. So we have a one-on-one relationship as well.
But do you put out statements on issues, probably offering solutions or passing resolutions and trying to engineer a national debate or discussion on it?
Well, in recent times, I have not seen that, and I personally have not engaged in that approach as of yet. per se, but it is something that has happened in the past where youth and sports councils have come together to discuss a particular issue or to raise concern on something. It has happened in the past.
So I want to ask you a question about, so you mentioned scholarships a few times, and part of what your Youth and Sports Council is doing in Gros North. For the past couple of years, we haven't had an announcement of an Islands call. Normally, Senator gives one or two Islands calls and so on. Is that something that, because I was trying to find out, for example, your general council of youth and sports councils, whether that is because these are youth, these are young people who are not getting an opportunity. So we didn't announce one last year, we didn't announce one this year. How concerning is that for you? Is this something that can be taken up by organizations in terms of finding out why?
Well, that's very interesting. I wasn't even aware of that personally, and that's a very interesting thing. And if something like that were to be happening, for sure, that should be taken up on the national level as to why an Island Scholar hasn't been announced. Because, from my understanding, the Island Scholar is simply the young person who has exceeded on the tertiary level and given an opportunity to study at whatever college or university he or she pleases. So that is very concerning. As a young person as well, and as a young person who just finished tertiary education, so I'm aware of what it costs for a young person to go down that route, and to think that the Islands cost something as basic as what the one or two scholarships for the Island Scholar has not been announced is very alarming to me.
Yeah, and I suppose with the NYC having its distractions and so on, that it has not time to probably look at those issues, but it's certainly an issue that youth. Because my thinking is that a country is supposed to give more than one or two Islands calls to its brightest and best young students. I think they deserve more than just one or two Islands calls, and to me, that a government should be more generous to its young people, especially those who are working so hard to qualify, and sometimes you miss it by a very small margin. That means you're out and you have to face the reality in terms of getting a scholarship. So because these are probably some of the issues that the NYC 2.0 should be taking
would have to take on.
And the other quick point too, I know you do some environmental work with the youth and sports councils, cleanups and so on. But do you see a role moving forward for youth movements or youth organizations to get more aggressively and actively involved in environmental issues and matters?
Well, for sure, I would believe so, especially with, the environment. We are inheriting the earth in the next coming years, and we have to deal with the environmental impact of what was happening prior with our ancestors, and of course with the global conversation on sustainable development and moving towards a greener planet and a greener country. For sure, young people. And if we look at it even on the global space, a lot of the causes are championed by young people. I must give my shout out to CYE and the Caribbean Youth Environmental Network. They have been really carrying the mantle in terms of environmental development, coastal cleanups, and even the Earth Days, and acknowledging Earth Days and having activities surrounded by that. So I must give my kudos to them, but I think a lot more can be emphasized, and we also as youth and sports councils and the National Youth Council should grant our support to the institutions like the Environmental Network and the Youth. I think SOAFA also has an environmental club, giving our support so that they can enact more projects and get more people coming on stream as well. I think Replas in Nusha also has a youth arm, and the National Farmers Credit Union also has a We Seal You organization of young people bent on environment and farming and agriculture. So I think giving for sure on the national level, for us to give more support and more kudos to organizations such as those who do that kind of work. And I would also give a shout out to the Ministry of Youth and Sports for recognizing that element, environment and sustainability, needed to have been in the draft youth policy, because the last one didn't have it. So this one to be tabled to Parliament does have it now as one of the recognized pillars for young people. So giving them their hats off on that one.
And how much Hist or how much urgency do you think that government should give? You just mentioned is the bill that's been taken to Parliament, the
Yes, so it has not been yet, but it is one of the things.
But how much urgency do you want to see, especially since we're talking about the youth economy as well? How much urgency do you want to see be given to it?
I think it should be tabled in the top 5 because we only have one planet. We don't have a planet B. We don't have a plan B. And as much, even if the Caribbean and countries like St. Lucia only contribute less than 1% to the global greenhouse gases, the fact that if we could save one bottle from going to the ocean, that still counts. If we could use less chemicals in our environment, in our food, which will go to our water supply, that still counts at the end of the day. It's our part that we should be playing as a country. And the fact that this country is going to be inherited by the youth of today, tomorrow, we don't want to inherit a country with problems that we can't fix, which if we act now, we can curb problems come the future.
Cool. Just one more question, Raejan. It was quite fun speaking with you. I knew you were actively involved in organizing debates in Gros. We got introduced
yes.
to that as well.
Oh, yes, that's so true.
So are you still working along those veins? Because we need to have the voice of youth discussing national issues.
Funny that you mention it. I'm now currently sitting on the National Youth Parliament Planning Committee for 2022. So we've just yesterday we had our last meeting where we vetted the first crop of young people to sit in the upcoming youth parliament. The idea behind youth parliament this time is that we would do the regular seating of parliament, but the idea moving forward is that we get to institutionalize youth parliament and make it stand as an entity on its own. Of course, granting the support and guidance supervision as would be necessary, but for it to stand as an entity, having continuous round every quarter parliament sittings where we give young people opportunities to come and discuss various bills. And what the hope is that for just starting for April Youth Parliament, for the young people to actually debate on one of the bills to be tabled to real parliament.
That was my next question, whether you actually get to discuss and debate what just went on, just like the Senate debates,
yes,
what happens in the lower house. Because sometimes you have a parliamentary debate, a youth parliament that's not dealing with any current national issues. And so you're saying that it can take one of the bills from the House and debate it. So that's a good move in terms of getting youth to be actually contributing to a national issue.
Yes, that is the trajectory we want to take with this youth parliament, and of course this one will be like the stepping stone for the rest to come.
Excellent. And you mentioned quarterly?
Yes, that is the hope, that after this one we do our post-mortem, we fix and put the right structure in place so that youth parliament stands as an institution on its own, and it also has quarterly youth parliament sittings where they debate not a random bill but an actual bill to be passed in the House.
And I'm hoping that your resolutions will be forwarded to the actual government.
Most definitely. And I would think that it would be nothing strange that some of the things that were discussed in the youth parliament, you would hear it reflected. Last time around when we were doing the SLNYC NLA debates, and there were a few topics that were debated on that level that was debated in the House, and we heard some very similar points being brought across. So the politicians do listen to the youth parliament when it relates to them. So that's the trajectory for us moving forward.
Well, that's encouraging to hear that they do listen.
Yeah, they do listen.
And they repeat it sometimes. Raejan, it's certainly a pleasure speaking with you. And we hope to have an ongoing discussion with you. I know you're preoccupied now with the General Assembly coming up. So good luck with that. And let's hope that we do. And we still have the youth. If you're out there, there's still time to send in your nominations up till March 17th.
Yes.
So please do. You need to get a good, strong slate of youth to represent their interests and so on. And all the best with this and your other work with the Gros North Youth and Sports Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fanis, for having me. Look forward to more.
Yes, we'll have some more ongoing discussions with you. Appreciate it. We've been chatting with Raejan Montoute, who's the president of the Gros North Youth and Sports Council, and also the chairperson of the Electoral Committee, preparing for the National Youth Council's General Assembly on the 16th of April. Thanks, Raejan, and all the best.
Thank you.